Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered the Citadel. I'm here today with Nifty Miner and Sovin, two of the community leaders in the 2017 Community Resurrected Historical NFT Project, that was kind of a long-winded answer for the 500 supply of the Citadel, which has caught a lot of traction recently. This is actually the first community revived project that I've had on the podcast. So there's a completely different dynamic to this than what you see with some of the historical projects like Mooncats and Curio Cards, where the artist and the dev team come back. The dev team or the dev behind this, still unknown to this day, but there is quite a cool and interesting story behind everything. So I'm very excited. I'm also an owner of a castle, so I'm part of the lords who govern it. So both of you, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm more than excited. It's pretty interesting as the Citadel. This was at December 30th, 2017, and we'll cover some of the historical artifacts pertinent to that. As of recently, there's been a ton of attraction around the Citadel, whether it's actually buying a castle or the DAO that's been attached to it. So we'll cover all of that. But to start, I'd have each of you kind of just explain your role within this community run historical project, and we'll start with Nifty.
Okay, so I've been there almost from the beginning. As we mentioned earlier, Wax Not Gonna Make It did the wrapper for Realms of Ether, and I did a community site first with a trait inspector, so you can get some more information about your specific castle with some original in-game stats. And later I created a staking contract.
Yeah, and that's part of the gold, which we could cover as well.
Oh yeah.
How about you, Sovin?
I'm kind of a jack of all trades, do whatever the community needs. I've been around since, I guess, the DAO formed and since the original Telegram group started in August, and helped with the original uncovery and then formation of the DAO. And really just try and push proposals along, keep the governance process alive, make sure that we're connected, do whatever needs being done, and make sure we're moving in the right direction. So I'm really just a community member that's trying to help as much as possible.
And with these community run archaeological projects, the community has to take more assertion into the things that are going to be run within the project, because there is no dev team. So you can basically write the next iteration of the story, whether you tend to continue on the original ideas of the dev or just take a complete right angle and buy a real life castle and kind of have the the IRL and a digital format to it. But let's stay a little bit on the dig and the recovery of this project. I know the contract, there's some nuances to it where it wasn't completely displayed, and I believe it was written into the comments, so you aren't able to audit or verify. Can either of you, at least from your perspective, describe the uncovery of Realms of ETH?
Sovin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I found the project when I was doing exploration on my own in March, and just tried to play the game, to be quite honest. And so I minted a few castles and wanted to see what it was all about, but quickly realized that I had no way of wrapping it. I had no way of exporting it and making it a tradable asset. So really, I just minted and didn't really engage for terribly long. And then, months go by, and a Telegram group popped up in early August of other archaeologists. I think Big D was the first one to organize the Telegram group. There was another member by the name of Zen, and then 0x Not Gonna Make It joined shortly thereafter. And this group of about 60 archaeologists kind of formed around how can we revive this project? Can we find the dev? Is he still alive? Is he still contributing to this project? Can we view the contract? And a lot of those questions were quickly answered, and most of them were no. And that, a lot of the information wasn't available to us anymore. But we had this great story and this great narrative that the dev left behind. And so, to begin with, he was anonymous, and so that's always something that sparks a lot of intrigue. He also left this trail behind of content that he had written on various social media sites, on Medium, on Reddit, and so we got to see a glimpse into the behind the scenes of what this dev was doing as he developed this game. And so I thought that was really cool. That was a really unique aspect. But we reached out to basically every channel that we possibly could. We went down a couple of different rabbit holes trying to find the dev and unmasking him. There was a contributor to the project that we reached out to, and it turned out that was a dead end. And he said he forked the project, but he really didn't do much. And so that was a dead end for us. And then we kept trying to find this anonymous dev and unmasking him to no avail. And so we kind of gave up after a couple of months. But we reached out, to his email, to his Reddit account, to his Medium account, to every possible avenue that we could. And then so we just decided to wrap it. We wanted input from the OG dev, but we didn't get that after a couple of weeks. And then 0x Not Gonna Make It decided, or volunteered to provide a wrapper, and he was magnificent in building that because we didn't have the code. He couldn't view the code because it wasn't published. And so the primary reason for us reaching out to this dev was to ask him, hey, can you publish this code so that we can interrogate the contract itself and try and build a wrapper so that we don't break anything, because it's a delicate process. And so 0x Not Gonna Make It, stepped in, wrapped it for us, and that was the start of the DAO. We didn't realize it at the time. We thought it was just going to be a wrapped project that we could trade on OpenSea. But then a couple of weeks later, we said, hey, you know what? We can build a community around this because we're so impressed by the concept. He had built out this elaborate game with all these intricate mechanisms that we thought we could expound upon and really build from as kind of a scaffolding. And that was like the original thought. Can we do a revival project? And that's where I don't want to speak for Nifty, but I think that's where the realms of ether.com website came from. And then we continued to build around this community. And so that's the origin story.
It's quite interesting because it's also one of the first known play to earn games, at least on ETH. I believe this and was it CryptoBots in 2017 are the only ones that have surfaced, at least with a mechanism. Also, when you look on the original website here, it mentions that there's going to be a limit of 1,000, but for those who are in the community know, it's actually 500. Do you know the reasoning behind that?
To be honest, I don't. But there's definitely a hard limit of 500.
Yeah, I think it was either a typo or a misprint or something in the code that prevented it from minting past 500.
Also, I'm not sure if it's in the Medium post or the Bitcoin Talk forum, but he described he had some issues when deploying the contract. So maybe there was like an original setting of 500 and we couldn't change that later. So yeah, we don't know it now, but...
Yeah, as we've learned through the historical space, a lot of these contracts have multiple bugs within it. And I think that's what makes this space kind of interesting, especially with Realms of ETH, since it was a play to earn game. The community decided to continue on with the addition of the game, but constructing its own narrative, which Nifty wrote the staking contract behind. Can you touch a little bit on what went into writing the staking contract? Did you guys, as a team, take note or account of the original developer's idea and kind of continue on to write the staking component and the gold reward based off of what the original dev had proposed, or at least the things that you could find? Or did the community decide to go a different direction?
To be honest, not really. So one reason is that the original developer didn't really went to the details what he had planned, but based on the interface of the contract, which is the name of the functions, and you can get an idea what he could do if he would be around. It's an expandable game, so he should be able to. And actually, there's some evidence in the code that you can add buildings to it, and with different actions what you can take in them, but that can be only done by the original developer. So we cannot really do that. So the idea with the gold mine was just to provide a way to give something to holders which can be used later to like if we do any kind of drop or develop a game on it, then we can basically reward long-term holders. That was just the idea.
And we see here that there's 183 right here. It says fortresses or citadels locked in the staking contract. This one is mine. And you can see it's generated so far 15,000 gold. Or I guess that's the total supply.
That's the total supply.
Total supply. And this is out of 376 fortresses that have been wrapped so far. Is there an expectation that we can ever reach 500 wrapped fortresses? Has there been a discovery period of trying to figure out if these can ever be recovered, or are some of the people just hiding out and waiting?
I'll say it kind of sounds like, or it seems like we have a bunch of dead wallets that hold castles. And we've had a number of community members like try and reach out to old wallets, either that have an ENS name attached to their wallet address, or just try and follow the trail to see how many of these wallets are still active. And there are very few of them that aren't wrapped yet that are still active. One of them is Pranksy, if you're familiar with that person. Another is Art Blocks. They all interacted with Realms of Ether at one point and minted a castle. And so they have the ability to wrap those castles, but it's unlikely that they will. The others are just dead wallets that either lost their keys or aren't active with their Ethereum wallet anymore. But Nizo is the community member that has tracked that down, and he's done a lot of work to try and spread awareness of the fact that you might have a castle in your wallet. And if you didn't know that today, then all of a sudden you get a $20,000 airdrop.
When we had that Twitter Spaces, I think it was like a week or two ago, there was somebody who ended up coming into the Spaces that actually owned, I believe, 2 castles, and they were just stoked.
Yeah, tweety us.
Yeah, beyond belief that the project that they had just experimented with, I believe that's what he said, he was just toying around with the contract back then, is now worth the equivalent about $40,000 USD.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I managed to track down a guy based on his he had some NFTs in his in that address, so it seemed to be like an active trader on OpenSea. So I managed to track him down somehow. But yeah, he was like in early 2018, they were trying out everything which came out, and he didn't really remember what was it, but it turned out that he no longer had the asset in that wallet. So
that's unfortunate. And these specific buildings and troops, the dragons and these small gold mines, is this here just for historical purposes, or is there an ability to integrate some of these back into the fresh wrapper?
Yeah, so this is only for information purposes, but yeah, so if we would want to try to mimic the original game, that would need a new wrapper. But yeah, it's a very delicate process, so it may be better just to keep it with this wrapper, and if someone wants to play, you can always unwrap to play the original game.
But you might face some troubles because of the buggy contract. Something very interesting that has generated a lot of attention is the DAO that's formed. And both of you had mentioned that it kind of started at the very beginning of the wrapper, but recently has gained more attention because of the interest in purchasing a castle, which passed at a 89-0 yes to no ratio, which is pretty incredible. I've noticed the memeing has increased, which is a heavy marketing tactic within the crypto world. Historical DAOs are starting to pop up, whether they're here with Realms of Ether or the Eggs DAO, Punicode's DAO. There's multiple of them. Do you believe that the DAO is going to be a staple for this project moving forward? And if so, what are some of the plans behind the DAO?
Well, I'll start by saying that I think that historical assets need no justification for their holding. And, the DAO is just a nice to have. It's an extension really of the identity of Realms of Ether. And, will it be a staple in the future? I think it'll definitely be the force behind the community. And it's demonstrated that already, that it's brought together a lot of collectors that would otherwise not be communicating together. And so having the Discord where we can come together and make proposals that can help improve the project in different ways has been really fun. And, you've seen it grow over the last couple of months. We really didn't get to be an active community until, I want to say, late December, early January. And it's really just taken off since then. And so it's been really cool to see the growth. And I think week to week or day to day, week to week, the DAO becomes more formalized. We understand our mission or purpose. We're holding town halls now. And so it's just been a fun process to see happen. And I think that it will be the driving force behind any person that becomes interested in Realms of Ether. It will probably be because of activities within the DAO. What do you think, Nifty?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have this goal, basically, just to be a center of NFT archaeology and use Realms of Ether to display NFT art in the upcoming gallery features, what a community member is working on. I think these all point in the same direction.
The Realms of ETH communities, I think, in this very cultural and mixed hotspot within the historic space, because it is a community revival project. There's only really 3 or 4 that have found any sort of success or even attention. I believe it's like Realms of ETH, and this is with no dev returning at all. So it's like Realms of ETH, I think like Way Cards and ETH Maps and the Panda community. So you could really set the standard. And if you see on Twitter, the historic space does receive a lot of flack, and you could just say FUD for people going and finding these historical pieces, which some people like to say they're just abandoned projects that ultimately failed. Why would anybody come and recover these and continue to build upon its quote unquote failed existence prior to a new community forming around it? So now that this has gained some attention and you have a floor of about 6 ETH at the time, do you think the criticism of some of the people in the NFT space have some sort of validation to that opinion towards historical NFT communities, and more pertinent to only community revived historical projects?
So one aspect of historical NFTs, and especially these pre-ERC 721 proto NFTs, is that these were the contracts which made it all possible. Like, these were the things what developers try to do and and the community, I mean the Ethereum community, ended up developing these new ideas and have a formal contract for NFTs. Like, these ideas were around before, but they were not formalized. So everyone has done it in its own way, in their own flavor. So yeah, I think it's just an evolutionary process, and the fact that most of these were abandoned is hard to ignore. But we had a 2 years long crypto winter in that time, and everything was abandoned. It's not like these projects were special in that sense.
How about you, Sovin?
I think the criticisms are a mixture of tribalism and jealousy. A lot of people that either bash or criticize some of these historical projects, it's either because they're within a community that sees themselves as superior to that historical project, or they feel like they were left out. And in my case, I felt like I missed the boat with Ether Rocks. In March, I could have acquired an Ether Rock for, I think, maybe it was 1 or 2 ETH. Could have acquired an Ether Lambo, but those are things that I passed on. And looking back on it, those are things that you wish you had purchased. And so I can look at that community and say, oh, that's just a scam. That's just a joke. But for the people that hold those assets, it's not a joke. And for people that are collectors, it's not a joke. And so I think it's a matter of where you're coming from and what your perspective is. I think eventually all people are going to realize that these were some of the foundational projects. They might not have all been as significant as, say, CryptoPunks, but these were foundational projects that established some of the kind of the rules and the processes behind how we develop these NFT games. And so having a piece of history, I think, will always be valuable. And whether or not people agree with that is one thing. But whether or not it's factual and that most people agree with it in the future, I think is another thing. And I think that as time continues to pass, as we've seen ourselves value history in the present, I think that we will continue to increasingly value history in the future. And there's a number of people that I think agree with us in the historical space. And I think that in terms of historical NFTs, we are likely just early adopters.
Very, very. We're essentially front-running history, which kind of sounds weird that you say it out loud. And Nifty, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, just that another thing, but from the NFT archaeologist space often overlooks, in my opinion, is that there are projects from 2020 and 2021 which will become historical assets, not because they are early, but because they were special in some sense. We don't know which one they will be yet, and there's always these discussions: who was first in what, in some specific niche. You can always find a narrative which makes your projects the first of something, but on the long term, down the road, we will know this in 10 years, which were the true innovators. And yeah.
The idea...
That's a good segue too.
Good.
I was going to say that's a good segue, because in talking about historically significant assets, we might not have seen every single historical asset that has significance within the long and continuing history of blockchain. Like Bored Apes Yacht Club, that came out last year, and that is going to have significance in the fact that it was, one of the latest NFT projects, the PFP projects, to derive tremendous value around its brand. And that might have been one of the best brands. And so we're going to see these projects that continue to crop up that have historical significance in each of their niches. And to that point, we can actually break the news here in the snapshot that we just recently had for the vote within the DAO on adding additional historical assets to the treasury. It was approved. It was passed. And I don't know if you want to look at that in the snapshot, but that's something that we'll be evaluating with the committee of NFT collectors that we have within the DAO. We're going to have a committee of 5 is going to be the number that we've gone with, that will determine which assets we will acquire, with a budget that we've allocated each month to add to the treasury. And so in that sense, Realms of Ether, the DAO and the community itself are going to become holders and co-owners of historically significant assets in the treasury. And so we'll get an opportunity to sort of determine what has historical significance and become that epicenter of history as we look at the two projects that are really the main efforts to that mission. We have both the Metaverse NFT Gallery and then the castle itself. And so I think what the community has kind of done is we've positioned ourselves to be sort of this historical epicenter, and Nifty's alluded to that as well.
There's only one, I believe. There's Lao DAO, which is a historical-based investment DAO that's allocating all their funds towards significant digital items. As you said, the idea of historical significance is very subjective, but you do have a very, very strong point that those who begin to allocate first kind of are setting history in terms of deciding upon what is most significant or not, because we can sit here and talk and debate semantics, but once dollars are allocated to in a certain direction and large amounts of it multiple times from multiple entities, that is kind of a signifier for where the market is directing not only money, but their beliefs towards what is the most significant projects in this entire space.
Yeah, definitely. And it'll be interesting. I mean, I might think that something is historically significant, but the committee might not agree with that. And it should be fun to see it kind of unravel. And what's unique about this proposal, just as kind of as a side note for the DAO, a lot of DAOs, they're run with one token, one vote. Whereas with this committee, so our DAO runs the same way, but with this committee, we're going to have 5 people that we select as a community to represent us in the selection of these historically significant assets. And that committee is going to nominate the assets that we purchase to the treasury, the multi-sig signers, which are different from that committee of NFT collectors, those experts. And so we're going to have this unique balance of power within the DAO of these this committee that's NFT experts and the multi-sig signers. So I'm really excited to see that play out.
Right. It seems the DAO and the community has figured out that a purely community-based project, you have to assign different directives and different roles for every individual within the community, or else everyone kind of faces that kind of like a bystander idea where everyone sits around and watches because they believe that everybody else is going to complete the task. But I've seen this in the Eggs DAO community as well as yours, that finding roles for each individual is pivotal towards the success of the overall project and reaching the larger audience in the NFT space, so that they can find suit. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to find a community, but we're all trying to learn and grow the space together. So it's cool that you guys are adding on to that idea.
Well, to that point, if you're in the DAO and you're listening to this, or you want to be in the DAO and you're listening to this and you want to contribute actively, we've got different categories or groups of areas that you can contribute to. And we're looking for more individuals to contribute. So we have buckets of areas that you can volunteer for. If you wanted to join those efforts, stop in the Discord and make sure that you've verified your ownership, and you can request to be a part of those channels and those efforts. And we would really appreciate you volunteering to do that. So just find what's comfortable for you, and you can contribute however possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of those buckets will be the committee for deciding what assets we will purchase with the DAO. So we have some names in our head who could be good curators for that, but basically anyone can nominate themselves in the citadel.
Yeah, it's very important. There's a few more things that I'd like to cover before I get into this gigantic castle purchase, which I think was the jumpstart to this initial bull run that's happened. You mentioned that the Citadel was also going to be some sort of like auction house or display for the historical community. Can you expand on that idea? And the reason why I ask that is because we've seen a few different auction houses, the traditional auction houses, Sotheby's, ArtNet, and Christie's, try to auction off historical assets, which Sotheby's has faced issues with the Namecoin stuff and generating traction. Same with ArtNet, and so everyone's kind of figuring out this way of, are these historical auction houses ironically going to be able to move into Web3, or is Web3 going to have to construct their own central focal point for these digital artifacts? So just would like to hear a little bit more of an expansion on the idea behind it.
Well, I'll preface it by saying that this is an anonymous contributor that's helping to build this Metaverse NFT Gallery. And we've had proposals within the community that are still in draft that would integrate it in some way. But one way that we have voted on, and we've concluded that we will do once it's released, is we will use it to display the assets that the Treasury holds. And the idea there is that it's a public use, and that people can visit the Citadel, and you can observe the assets that we've required that are historically significant. And so it'll just essentially be like a library or a museum. But then we've also had discussion within the community as to how we can further integrate that into the community. And one proposal that is still in conversation at this point, it's not in draft at for the DAO proposals, is, how can we act as a platform to where we can host auctions? So that was an idea that was brought up, and that's still in the discussion phase. So I don't feel like we have enough solidity there to say that it's a formal proposal. But Nifty, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you said everything.
And this is where the community can have a lot of fun and creativity, because if it does become an auction house, pseudo auction house, or it has some sort of services that it can offer, you can use the Realms of ETH token to basically be a membership pass to get in, right? Maybe instead of where Sotheby's and Christie have a 20% buyer's premium, anybody who holds an ETH, Realms of ETH castle can basically have 0 or pretty nominal buyer premium percentages, or it could go back into the fund, or even with the gold token that is for staking can be used as funds within the bidding process, which I find very, very fascinating, because the play to earn model can also seep out into the real world, and it's an addition onto the DAO. So it's this project has so many unique angles and directions that it could go, which it's only pertinent to maybe 3 or 4 different projects that exist.
Yeah, and I think what we're starting to see, and that's why we're holders of Realms of Ether. It's not just because of the history; it's because of the platform that we kind of see in the future. When we look into our crystal ball, we can kind of see how it's playing out, and it's happening through each of these milestones that we're checking to be the epicenter of history. And one of them certainly is the possibility of what an auction house can do for us. Having that platform, if we were to become sort of the Christie's of historically significant assets, and we were to determine and gate significant assets from the rest of the NFT community, then we can kind of cultivate the most valuable projects. And then, like you said, the possibility of having some sort of royalty or some sort of recurring revenue from those auctions gives us the possibility of having another revenue stream, which is always helpful in sustaining a DAO. And that's primarily where we've derived. That's a majority of where we've derived our treasury balance up to this point.
And what a better place than to have an auction in a metaverse citadel, which has been an ongoing meme within the crypto community kind of since its inception. You got moons, Lambos, and citadels have kind of been a focal point for a long, long time. So could not be in a better position.
And not only that, but when you think about future metaverse integrations, what does that mean if you have a museum that only you have access to, that you can display to other metaverses? What does that look like in the future? Can you take a bridge from one metaverse to another and use your citadel as a hub for where you operate out of in the metaverse. That's something that is a possibility as well. There's infinite possibilities in what we can do in the metaverse, and I think that having a citadel will put you in a position of strength because you'll be able to use that as your platform in addition to the DAO's platform.
Absolutely. And moving from the metaverse into the real world, this proposal that we have on the screen, the medieval castle purchase proposal, which passed literally at 100%. Is this actually going to happen? I would love to have a castle. We've seen a few different DAOs try to acquire real world assets. Funks try to purchase a mountain, and then we have the Constitution DAO try to purchase the DAO. Is this something that can happen, or is it more of a meme?
Listen, I'll preface this, and I know if you will say the same thing. I'll preface this with first, I want to say anything is possible. Absolutely anything is possible as long as you have enough willpower and dedication. So anything is possible. Second, I will say that this is a long-term project, and we want to make sure that that's perfectly clear. I think with a lot of those other DAOs that have cropped up, they're kind of like fly-by-night DAOs. Not necessarily. I'm not saying they're bad characters or anything like that, but they're DAOs that pop up with the one stated goal of acquiring that asset, and that's not Realms of Ether. This is something that we think aligns with our mission, our purpose, and that it would provide value to the community in a number of different ways. But if you're talking to me, I think it will absolutely happen, and I believe that for a number of different reasons. One of which is the treasury growth, the other of which is the community involvement. I recently had a thread talking about why Realms of Ether is going to become one of the most successful projects, and it's because of the ways that you would evaluate any other successful organization. Realms of Ether has all of those facets. And then more because of the collectible aspect and the history aspect. And so when you look at if you were to evaluate our chance of success probabilistically, I would put our chances of success at higher than 70%. But that's just my subjective perception and opinion. But Nifty, I'm sure you have more to say as well.
Yeah, I have the same perception, and yeah, if it's up to me, it will happen for sure. And yeah, it's definitely a matter of time, but yeah, I think it will happen. It's inevitable.
Inevitable. I love it.
You can see that in the treasury growth as well. I mean, if you look from week to week, we've been growing at like 55%. If you were looking at the treasury growth, and then just today, our balance went up to nearly 20 ETH. And that's just from royalties. And then you start to think about how we can increase our revenue streams within the metaverse. And you start to realize that it is extremely possible, if not very likely, that we'll be able to acquire a castle and in the future. And that's because you look at, I mean, if you just look at the price, the price tag of a castle, it's not terribly expensive. A lot of people think that it costs millions of euros. And they might, if you're looking at a castle with like hundreds of rooms, but for a castle that would accommodate our DAO, it likely wouldn't cost more than 1 or 2 million euros. And that's a really, really nice, luxurious castle. And then you look at the fact that our DAO the treasury recently passed $100,000. And you start to think, wow, this is actually possible. And that, $100,000 is literally enough to go out and buy a castle today. And then if you start to think about financing, we could put down, like, say, 10% or whatever the requirements are for the specific country that we wanted to buy the castle in. And you quickly realize that we can literally buy one today. So it's really cool.
That is beautiful. Has there been any consideration or discussion about the logistics behind it, maintenance, security, cleanliness? Is that something that's been considered?
Yeah, we've been talking about these topics a lot, but one thing we have to, decide at some point what will be the real usage of the asset, what will be the goal, how will we fill it up with content. Well,
I would love an Airbnb castle. I just have to say that.
I
Well,
personally,
if the treasury grows enough, we wouldn't have to Airbnb it for revenue, man.
yeah, exactly. So in my opinion, it should be something what we basically contribute to DAO members and NFT archaeology space. My dream scenario is a museum which is both real life and metaverse, and it just an interesting fact that you can visit it at both locations. And if we end up doing an auction house, you can do the auction in real life in a castle, and it could have a live stream which is only viewable from the metaverse castle, for example. So there are like very interesting ways of crossing from one world to another, and the whole context of history in a medieval castle and how you have this ambiguity of historical blockchain assets, which are like 5-year-old, but we are talking about them as like ancient artifacts. But it totally makes sense. And if you pair that with new media art, which is considered a new thing, it's just like this whole dichotomy in art and how you can connect these dots. I think it's a really inspiring environment.
My creativity goes wild whenever I'm in the Citadel sub chat in the Discord, and all of these ideas are just flying. It really feels like we're going back to kind of like the childhood days where you could just dream about anything that you want to create. And that's a cool component to contracts that are enforced by code, is that it's indiscriminatory, and anybody can contribute to any way that they'd like, and it's enforced that way. I just want to say that I would love to host a real life auction inside of a castle. I think that would contribute way more to the kind of mimetic ideology that the NFT world displays on Twitter, more than some of these traditional auction houses that have been around for 100 or 200 years and kind of are stuck in their own ways. It gives you the freedom to really lean into what NFTs are about, and having fun and light about not only the community, but the overall space itself. So I really hope that can happen one day.
It will.
Absolutely. Well, and the cool thing is, like, we're seeing the DAO develop layers and layers of history and symbolism. Like, I think that's, you talked about mimetic desire. I think one of the big drivers behind why people are initially interested in the project is like the mimetic desire of a castle. It's a really freaking cool. And then you talk about the Bitcoin Citadel and that lore, and you integrate that. And that's like the first layer, is the fact that it's just collectible and it's mimetic and everything like that. And then you talk about the second layer of actually performing historical acts. And that's the Realms of Ether becoming the first NFT castle gallery in the history of the blockchain and history of the world. And then you talk about the first DAO to acquire a castle in the history of the world, and that's also Realms of Ether. And so you have these layers and layers of history that we're building upon, and you start to realize that not only is this a historical project that has significance, but it's becoming historically significant through the actions of the DAO.
Yeah, that's something that we were discussing in the beginning, is there's so many avenues to increasing historical significance that we still have no idea what it is. There's a lot of projects today that years from now will be historically significant. The internet, I've seen a lot of Twitter posts of people saying that are giving flack to NFT archaeologists, saying, we're going to go uncover Beast and a bunch of these like failed projects, that Irene DAO and all these different things that didn't live up to the hype. But I don't know. At the end of the day, NFTs, to me, they're kind of like these gamified social arenas, and there's so many different options to play these different games where people are pulling a bunch of capital and building upon it. We've never seen we've never seen a technology that can scale so many forms of capital within one community, right? You have social capital, intellectual capital, obviously monetary capital, and more ideas are going to circulate and trickle into NFTs and then be able to expand upon it. So the Citadel is always going to have some history within it. And speaking of the Citadel, I got to know about the picture that's displayed. Was that one of the original pictures, or was this something that was kind of just pulled off of Google Images?
It's from the original game. And it's if you go back to the website, you can find a link to the artist. So it's
on this website,
open license or whatnot. I think along in the credits. On the other side. Yeah.
It's down here somewhere.
Yeah, the castle above. Yeah.
Castle.
The one above.
Okay. So you guys definitely just continued on with it. Let's see. Was there ever any debate to use a different image, or was this set in stone since it just plays on the historical value?
Yeah, I think when we decided to do the wrapper, we did have a lengthy discussion as to should we make each castle unique, and that was Adam McBride's criticism the last spaces that we had. And we decided, no, we wanted to keep it original. We want to keep it in line with what the dev had built. We want to keep it as intact as possible. So that was kind of the intent of the wrapper. Was we just wanted to keep it, keep the historical value. I mean, that's what the community is all about, and that's ultimately what ended up happening. I know that some people, they want to see different designs in their castle. They want to see different colors. But when you think about it, that's kind of what makes Realms of Ether cool, is that they're all the same. I mean, you do have very unique characteristics. And Nifty, you were so kind to build that website, and so you're able to inspect each of those characteristics and check based on my coordinates of my castle. What do I have? What do I have in my kingdom? And how rare is it? When was it minted? And all these cool things that a lot of people don't really think about at first glance. But we give you the ability to sort of uncover that.
And the memes that are created off of this, it's phenomenal, I have to say. Whoever is the chief meme officer of the group, props to you guys, because I'm absolutely terrible at that stuff.
They are pretty good.
Yeah. In terms of the Discord, so Discord's generally the hub for all different communities, hashing out debates and conversation. The members are still fairly low, but you have 97 in here. How has Discord played a role in the growth of the community? And has there been any discussion to maybe migrate off of Discord or utilize various forms of communication to kind of get the job done?
So, I mean, Discord's done the job up until now. I mean, we over the last couple of weeks, we came to the decision that for some of these proposals, they really just required verbal discussion. And so that's why we brought up the topic, or the idea of having town halls where we could just voice our opinions and our proposals and our concerns. And that way we could have very, very easy, very quick back and forth. And so that's why we brought up that first town hall. But so I guess that's really the first time that we've expanded our medium outside of Discord. But for now, I mean, Discord's been great aside from the time it went down a couple of weeks ago. But we really didn't have any issues because of it. But Discord's been great. I don't know if Nifty's thought about anything else, but I think we'll expand into Twitter Spaces. Tomorrow is when we're going to have our first town hall. So if you are listening, make sure to either listen to that live or the recording of it.
Absolutely. This Twitter Spaces has become a focal point for community growth and reaching a wider audience. It's essentially a phenomenal tool. I want to talk about gold for a second. I forgot, I'm kind of dating back a little bit. Gold, right? So we have this contract that has about 180 something or so castles in it that's generating gold. what is happening with this gold? Is there debate around, is there any leading debates or proposals in terms of what the utility is going to be for it? Or is it just something that's accruing value, or I guess it's valueless at the moment, but it's just sitting there accruing to be used in some sort of other manner?
Yeah, so there's no official proposal, but it came up several times that there should be some kind of a drop towards realm owners. So that's something where we could use it for, you would have to burn some gold to get whatever we end up dropping for the owners. And yeah, that's, and if we end up using Citadel art, there could be utility, but also for the real life castle, that's also an option for holders, that basically we could use gold for the accounting of how people can access the services. So if there's an accommodation for holders, for example, then they could just pay with gold. That's an obvious one.
Yeah. And we do have a kind of a living idea paper for the castle proposal. And I think some of those mechanisms for gold integration could be applied for any of the other revenue generation initiatives that we have. So for the draft paper that we have, the integration would be that if it were to be like an Airbnb castle, like a hotel, the payments that the public would settle their expenses in would be in gold. So they might pay in Bitcoin or Ethereum or USD, but the payments would settle in gold. And then the second mechanism there is that for if it were, again, a caveat, if it were to be an Airbnb or a hotel, any profits that were made would be given back to the community in the form of like a bond, where you could stake your castle and say, I'm not going to use the days that I'm authorized to stay at this hotel per month. So I'm just going to stake in this contract, and I'm going to receive whatever profits we make, and that will be paid out in gold too. So there's a lot of ways that we can integrate gold. We also, as you pulled up on the Discord, we were going to discuss the possibility of doing like a gold airdrop to anyone that's not already a Realms of Ether member. So there's a lot of different possibilities, and I think they're all really exciting.
500 castles is quite a small number in terms of some of these larger communities that you see with upwards of 25,000 assets. So it seems like there can be a limiting factor to the ceiling of how high the community can grow within the realms of ETH. Has there been a discussion in terms of maybe doing a secondary drop in the future? My proposal was sandcastles as just like an easy, cheaper access to maybe enter the real life castle, or be a member in terms of the DAO, where maybe the people who own citadels have voting rights, but the people who have sandcastles can still reap some of the benefits and the rewards. Has there been any discussion about the potential of a ceiling, or raising the limit of the ceiling?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to previously with the gold. So yeah, that's one way of expanding the community. The question is it worth it? So how does it affect owning a castle? Does it we just have to make sure that it doesn't hurt the narrative and the uniqueness.
Yeah, I mean, there's also other ways that we can integrate more people, and that's providing other NFTs that are along the similar lines and similar like designer intent of the game. So that's a possibility. We can always look into fractionalizing. Say if the floor gets to 100 ETH, which I think it will at some point, but say it gets to 100 ETH, we can fractionalize castles and then sell those fractional parts and incorporate more people that way. So there's a lot of different ways. It's just a matter of what works best for the timing and, what'll be best for the community long term.
It's good that these debates are being had, especially in just about 6 months of time or 5 months in time that the project's been rediscovered and the community has been formed. I do have one final question for you, which I have never heard anybody ask in any of the spaces, is that let's say the original dev resurfaces, can prove that they have keys or ownership over the original contract. Has this discussion been had? And if so, what are your thoughts on if the original dev does resurface?
That would be definitely interesting. I would love to have the game, developed, the original game. Because right now it's, you cannot do a lot of things in it. You can buy a few buildings and recruit troops, but it kind of ends there. So I would be really excited. We could, get to know finally the source code for the contract.
I agree with Nifty. I think it would be really cool to know who it is, because I think that this guy probably stayed in crypto, and that he's probably very talented, a guy or girl, we don't know, but it would be cool to see the original vision unfold, and to see what else he had in mind, and to get his thoughts on the DAO and what we're doing, and what he thinks about that. So yeah, I think it'd be cool. And I don't know what he would have planned for the game, but we've tried reaching out so many times that I'm fairly confident that we won't hear from him, but you never know.
It would be interesting to see the confliction if the original dev came in and wanted to resume their original vision and kind of go against what the community's doing, and to kind of see that clash in real time. Obviously, the odds of that happening are slim to none, but in the world of NFTs and crypto, anything can happen. And I don't think we've ever seen a case of that happening before. So it'd be kind of this debate on, is it the community or is it the original artist that takes precedent? And honestly, I think that kind of event could actually add more value to the narrative and the story, but I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're kind of seeing some of these cases, or similar cases, not identical, but happen with, CryptoPunks with, version 1 and version 2. And so that's been really interesting to see play out. But I don't think he's going to come back, given how many times we tried reaching out. And by now, that's something that you built, a couple of years ago. You probably would have checked on it at some point or another. So, I've had some conversations with community members, and, talk about the pros and cons as to whether or not he's anonymous. And as it stands right now, having it a non-founder is actually really cool, because it makes it very similar to Satoshi Nakamoto and Bitcoin. And so there's some cool like mystery and ambiguity there that I think is fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the decentralization. I'm going into the ethos. Well, both you gentlemen, I thank you for joining me and talking about Realms of ETH. I'm happy to be a part of the community and to see it grow, and the recent interest in the last month just kind of explode. To see where it goes from here, I don't really know. 100 ETH floor would be nice. A real world castle would be nice. I'm a very firm believer in the historical auction kind of derivative of whatever that ends up being told. There's a lot of opportunity for historical NFT infrastructure that needs to be put in place that is still out there for the taking. But we're really in the first 0.1% of what's going to end up happening with the historical space, especially if Coinbase gives us a section or a bunch of other externalities that happen with some other historical projects that end up taking off. It's just, I'm very excited that the overall historical community kind of bands together and isn't nearly as tribal as we see on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thanks for having us. And I just saw on Discord too, there's only 25 castles below 1,000 ETH. So I think you're mentioning of 100 ETH is probably going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
1,000 ETH. Here we go, guys. Well, Nifty and Sovin, thank you guys. And everyone who's listening and watching, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.